Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have Javier with me, who wrote A Reason to Smile. So, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, it's Javier. It's a Spanish name.
It's Javier. I'm not very good at.
There we go.
I don't think I'm going to get it, everybody. So, we're just going to move on. I'm a little bit nervous because it's been, 4 years now?
It's been a minute. I saw you not too long ago because I saw you bought my second book, and my second book came out in 2016. But I realized that when you bought it, I was like, wow, it's been a minute since I seen you, and that was like maybe 2 years ago. So like 2018, I saw you.
Yeah, that was at BlurredCon.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. That was 2 years ago.
And a lot has changed in that time period because obviously you have 3 reasons to smiles that are out there right now.
Yep.
And a lot's going on in the world currently. Obviously, we're in the middle of COVID-19. So I'm very curious how you're holding up and how that's affecting you.
So it's been a tough go of it, as I'm sure as it has for everyone else. I've been fortunate that my lady and we've been able to be apart from the city that I grew up in. I miss my city, but I've been able to kind of distance myself from the city and move out to Long Island for a little bit to get away from it all, because I live in a building with 24 stories and 9 apartments in each floor. So that's a good number of people that live in that building. And when I started realizing there were people in the building that had the virus, I was like, there's no way that I could stay here and feel safe. So we were fortunate to be able to move out to Long Island, and we've got a little space out here that we're at, and we get to go outside and walk around and not be as paranoid as I generally am with something this epidemic, with this epic. Sorry. So I've just been trying to stay busy, keep my daughter busy. I've got a 3-year-old, so trying to keep her busy and keep her mind excelling, because she's a brilliant child who was doing really well in preschool or daycare, and then preschool, and then she's about to start pre-K in August. So I want to keep doing the things that she needs to excel and continue to be the great kid that she is.
And even to go off a little bit of that, because A Reason to Smile was sort of developed out of that a little bit, where it's dealing with your little one to some degree. So let's talk a little bit about A Reason to Smile.
Sure. So A Reason to Smile started in 2012 when I was working at my first charter school. And I realized that there's 2 things that I realized. I realized as a professional artist, I realized I was way too slow to hit the monthly deadlines that Marvel, DC, and some of the monthly comic book companies were expecting from their artists. So I figured, let me go ahead and try to make my own story, use that as my portfolio, and then maybe I can build something from there. So as I was working in the school that I was working at, I realized that there were no books about Puerto Rican people. There was books about people from the Middle East, books about people from South America, people from Asia, from all over the world, but no stories about Puerto Ricans. And we've been in New York, especially, in the city that I work in, the city that I'm from. We've been in New York since, I want to say, the early 1900s. So for us to be around in this city and to not have any kind of representation in the stories that are being told to the children that are growing up in the city that we all are in, I felt was a shame. And I felt that there was something that needed to be done. And I definitely live by the idea of being the change that you want to see. So I decided, you know what? Everyone else can make stories about everybody else. I'm going to make a story about a little girl and make her Puerto Rican. So I started trying to develop what would this little Puerto Rican girl do and be that can counter the way pop culture sees us and counter the way that we see entertainment. Because as with most comic book stories, someone's got to be punched in the face or, have a magical amulet in order for change to be effected. And there's not enough stories that are out there that just celebrate the life that we live and how that is a special and beautiful and powerful thing. So I said, you know what? I'm always a positive person, and I always want to find the bright side out of life. So let me go ahead and make a story that centers around that, and maybe people will listen to it because it stars a little girl. You know, because if it's me telling that story and you see my face on it, she's like, "Yo, shut up! I don't want to hear from you. You know, you just like me. I don't. Why do I need to hear from you?" So I figured if it comes from a child, you might be able to have more sympathy, more understanding, more patience to listen to that type of story. In turn, I wanted to also make a story that kind of celebrated our individuality, supported the imaginations that we have that are basically drummed out of us in the workforce, and help us revisit our youth, and make people feel like they are able to feel comfortable in their own skin, because those are things that are often either demonized or helps to get people ostracized. So I said, let me go ahead and touch on that, because my students are saying, oh, that's for boys, oh, that's for girls, I can't do that because I'm a kid, and things along those lines. So I said, okay, I'm like a child character that can do things. She might not be able to do the same things that adults can do, but she's going to be able to do some things that are going to make her cool, are going to make the younger kids in the school look up to her. But to help make the story more relevant to other people, she's got to be the type of character that older people can look at and say, that's who I was, or that's who I wish I was when I was a kid. So that's how Luisa Brillante came to be.
And Reason to Smile takes place in New York City, and there's animals in there, and there's other things going on, and it's very cool and it's very artistic. So what was that entire experience like, really building that out and having a good time doing it, and doing it like a child's book, but also like a graphic novel at the same time?
So one of the things that I try to address in my stories trying to get around the idea of this is how it's supposed to be. This is how it is. It's set in stone. I don't like that. I don't like that idea. I like being able to be versatile. I like being able to step outside the box. I like being able to do something different than what's been done, or even do what's been done and enjoy all of that. So I always hear people talking about the city, oh, the city's like this, oh, the city's like that. Yet when they come to the city, it's a very different experience that they have. So I wanted to showcase that in the story. I wanted to show people that there are so many different people that walk around in the city. You get to see that in some of the pages. Um, People from different walks of life, age, race, um, size. There's big people, there's little people, there's adults, there's kids, there's um, people from different countries, just like in what you see in New York City. But also, I wanted to showcase that the city is not just this stiff, concrete jungle that they call it. There's life to it. So one of the things that I've always loved about the Batman series is how they've made Gotham City a character. So um, as you're seeing Batman, you're seeing this character behind him that helps support the things that he does and the things that he goes through. So that's one of the things that I try to affect in my stories, is to help push that visual narrative of, the city being a character. I try to push that heavily, and making sure that I go to different locations and I take pictures and I bring them home and I draw the actual city. I don't say, "Hey, this is New York City," and then uh, it's a farm. It's like, what? There's no farms in New York City. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. I want it to feel as authentic as I can make it. And one of the things that I'm going to do to help push that issue, as well as in the future books that I make, whenever you see one of the characters going to a specific spot in New York City, there's going to be a map that shows you where they've been and how you can get there yourself.
And before we get to there, and before we get to volume 2, one of the cool things about Reason to Smile was that it was Kickstarted. So what was that experience like, and really going into that and doing it the indie way?
So, like I said before about trying to make it be like a portfolio, I wanted just to make as good of a story as I've ever made. because I've never done a book before. I did A Reason to Smile Volume 1. I had done comic book pages and stuff for my portfolio to try to get into the different companies, but I had never put together a full production. So doing that was a task, a lot of learning, a lot of growing. But one of the things that I have in my roots is I used to write songs that were in the hip hop genre. So I wanted to be a hip hop artist. I'm a rapper. I'm a lyricist. Um, I've been into hip hop since Tribe Called Quest and you know the native tongues and all them influenced my way of seeing music. And because I used to write, I wanted to then create my own songs and put them out there. And I used to see the guys on the street like, hey, check out my demo, look at my donations for a CD or whatever. And I always thought that if I ever made an album, if I didn't have a major record deal, I would just buy as many blank CDs as I could and just pass them out with a beautiful piece of artwork with it to entice them to then listen to the songs. Because it's one thing to have this creation that you put out there, but it's another thing to have people want to actually look at it and be a part of it. So I just wanted to give it away for free. So because that was the hustle that I was going to have with music, and I decided to continue and just focus on the arts, which is a whole nother conversation. We'll talk about that later. But I realized I was just going to create this book and then see how I was going to get it out to the people. And then when I learned that Kickstarter existed, I was like, the lights came down and the clouds parted, and I was like, this is it. So I ended up researching Kickstarter and seeing what other Kickstarters had done similar to what I wanted to do, and put a package together that thankfully was pretty successful.
And what is that like for you? Because this is very indie. This is very out there. This is hasn't been done really before.
Yeah.
And you're doing a book representing Puerto Rican people and people who have not been represented in the comic world. So what is
So
that like for support?
So one of the things that was really great to see was that in me trying to create this different style of book, because one of the things that is great about the story in my eyes is the visual storytelling of it. I have on one side, I have all the art over here that tells the story, and then over here I have a little, a paragraph, little excerpt about what is actually happening in the story. So you can read the story on one side, and you can see the art on the other side, and they both tell the story. So you can separate them and still get a story. You can put them together, and they complement each other. So in showing that to the people of the world, um, people gravitated towards it. And then what was really cool too is that everybody that I've known from elementary school to high school to college to being on DeviantArt and amassing a fan base from them, from that website, people were waiting for something like this from me. They were like, "Hey, we've loved your artwork for however many years. We love you as a human being. We want to support what you do." And thankfully, that was something that they did. They showed and proved. I needed $8,000 to get this book completed for various factors, from T-shirts, stickers to um, guest artists and whatnot. And I was able to get I think it was like 134% of my goal. That ended up allowing me to have a little bit of change in my pocket and actually be able to produce the book. So it made me feel like I was doing the right thing, because as an artist, you always wonder, are people going to like what I do? Is it good enough? You know, how does this measure up to what other people have done? And for people to have paid that much money, to have bought that many copies, for me to have had that kind of success, told me that it it was all worth it. So that then sparked the idea of what's next.
And let's talk about what's next, because Volume 2 came out, also kickstarted.
Mhm.
So what was that like?
That one was a very strange experience because I was a little bit too high on my horse, and I produced the book. Actually, I didn't produce the book. I produced the Kickstarter before I produced the book. I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it done." You know, they like the first one so much that they want the second one. And and what was great about the first one was that the entire thing was done except for the guest artists who had to pay once I got the money from Kickstarter. I just announced that these guys would be a part of the book if I get the money. So once I got the money, I was able to pay those people. Then I did the cover, and then boom, you know, I was able to finish the book. With the second book, all I had was the cover. I did the cover first this time, and an idea of promotion. Like, hey, this is a possibility if you guys can get me this money. So that one was a lot more stressful because I didn't get to my goal until like the last day. So I'm constantly, you know, creating artwork to like try to push the story, and try to push the narrative, and advertise the book, and let people know, hey, this is out here. I'm still here, still doing things. And thankfully, by like that, like I said, that last day, I made that goal, and you know, I made a little bit more, which is nice. So I then had to make sure that this book was that much better than the first book. So with everything that I learned from the first book, I went from a 44-page story to a 48-page story. I went from a 60-page hardcover to a 70-page hardcover. So I upped the ante. I brought another artist on instead of five artists. I had six artists contribute to the hardcover, um, and then I made sure that the book was done on time and everybody was able to get their copies. And that was the other side of it too, like, making sure that that money came through and I held on to it so that way I can make sure everyone got their copies because I didn't want to be one of those creators that people had a negative experience with, where they said, hey, he didn't get me my book on time. He said he was going to do it and the book never came out. Especially since I did the Kickstarter before the book. So I learned that lesson, and then thankfully, the third Kickstarter was a lot more successful, a lot easier, um, and was just a better experience altogether because the book was finished beforehand.
And so let's just jump into the third one while we're at it. So what was that one like? Because that's expanding the entire story and universe, for lack of a better word.
So with the third one, I wanted to. So with volume one, it was an easy enough reading level that anyone that knew how to read could read the book, from a child to an adult, from a beginning reader to an aging grandparent. The text was big enough. The concepts were easy enough. There wasn't a heavy load of reading. But I realized that a lot of my fans were not interested in the book because it was too easy. So I said, okay, let's make volume two even more of a bulky book, right? Let's go ahead and add some more detail in the artwork. Let's go ahead and make a meatier story. So there's a lot more detail in the artwork. There's a lot more detail in the story. It went from a paragraph per page to paragraphs per page. So then when I did the third book, I said, okay, I've got a book that younger kids can read. I got a book that adults can read. But I don't have a book that babies have for the parents to have for their babies, because parents would see volume one and say, yeah, that's an easier book, but I don't want to read that to my child. It's still a lot of words. My 2-year-old is not going to sit still for that. So I said, okay, well, I have a baby now. So maybe if I make a board book, something my kid will enjoy, and then something that other fans and other parents will be able to enjoy with their children. So I decided to make a board book, and now I have 3 books that hit 3 different reading levels, and that way the kids can grow with the books. And I decided to take a different approach to the artwork, in that I wanted it to be something that I could frame all 12 pages, which amount to 24 pages in the book, but it's 12 pages in creation. Um, so I wanted to have something that I could frame, put in a gallery, and then make it look more like a story book versus a comic book. So I did, instead of doing everything digitally, I watercolor painted the backgrounds, and then I digitally colored the foregrounds, which I would then print on cellophane, which I would lay over top of the watercolors, and then put that together, put that in a frame, and boom, now you have a gallery piece.
So what was that like? Because that's so interesting.
So one of the things I've always wanted to do is I always wanted to work in cartoons. Like cartoons was what I was first exposed to before comics, and I kind of forgot that. I forgot that that was one of my first loves, because when I got into comics, comics became, it just took over my life. So when I remembered how much cartoons really meant to me, I said, you know what? People love animated cells. They always think they're so cool, and they always occupy a nice space on the wall when somebody has them up. So if my art looks like an animated cell, if it looks like the cartoons that I hope to create in the future, then maybe that will be another way to push this idea of a reason to smile forward. So it was a very strange experience. And I tried it out first with the fan art of Sesame Street, and everybody loved it. And it's a piece that I sell at my conventions that still does well. But it was a very different experience in that I had to account for a new way of creating. Because I've painted in watercolors when I was in college, but that was the last time I painted in watercolors. And that was pretty much the last time I painted, period. Because I used to paint a lot in oils when I was in college. I actually won a Best in Show award my junior year for an oil painting I did. But college was just such a strange and different experience that I ended up not painting anymore after college. So remembering that that was something that I loved and I wanted to get back into was a very empowering and endearing experience that now I just continue to do. So a lot of the work that I do now has that element in it where it's watercolor backgrounds, digital foregrounds, to allow to have my work be that much different than somebody else's artwork.
And now book 3 and book 2 are out. How are they received?
It's very interesting because a lot of times when people, when a volume one or an issue one comes out, it always does better than the subsequent books. The first issue usually does X amount, and then every book after that does about half or just less sales. So what's been really cool is that volume two is a little bit better than that. So it ends up, instead of only selling half the amount of the volume ones that I sell, I've throughout the years that I've been selling volume one and volume two, I want to say it's about a third to like 60 to 70% to the 100% of the volume one. So if I sell 10 volume ones, I'll sell 6 to 7 volume twos. There's shows where I sell out of both books. And then when I started getting the board book, that became a whole nother way of having to set up my table, having to set up my approach to talking to people about the books. The board book has sold over 300 copies within the first year that it was published. And that's just me going to comic book conventions and trying to go to book fairs and talking to people. So I sold over 300 copies that way. And then the entire series as a whole has about 3,300 copies sold.
So how does that make you feel? Because that's a big deal. And I know that some people are going to be listening, and they're going to say, "Oh, 3,300," but as an indie publisher, that's a big deal.
So I've never done anything in my life in the thousands, except for the Kickstarters and how I've made the money on the Kickstarter, which is a whole new thing in the scope of the world. Doing anything in the thousands has never happened to me. So to be able to say, hey, do you want to purchase this thing that I've created and do that 3,300 times? It's a lot, So no, it's not the hundreds of thousands that Marvel has sold, X-Men #1 or how they sell 30,000 copies of Spider-Man a week or a month. It's nothing like that, and I don't ever expect to be that. But to be able to say that I've done this, can you say you've done that? Can the person next to you say they've done that? Can your mama say that she's done that? I can say I've done that. So it's just a thing that I look back and say, you know what, I've accomplished something that's beautiful, and I hope to continue to do it.
And let's talk about something that's related to this. And this is the Comic-Con stuff that's going on or not going on right now. So how do you feel, and how are you dealing with that?
So Comic Cons are expensive. So for me to be at a Comic Con, I got to spend about anywhere between $200 to $300 just for the table itself. I got to then pay for flights, which is anywhere between $200 and $300. I got to then pay for food and lodging, which could be another, two and change to like $500, depending on how much I have to spend and how close to the deadline I've waited. So I generally spend anywhere between like $700 to $1,000 just to be at whatever show you see me at. So if you see me at Emerald City, I've already spent close to $1,000 before we even had a conversation. If I'm at New York Comic Con, that's the only show, as expensive and as crazy as that show is, that's the only show where I don't have to spend so much money because I lived it. Like what was it? Big Apple Con, New York Comic Con, any of those New York shows are the only ones I don't have to spend so much money. So not doing a Comic Con has kind of changed my dynamic in that I just have to have a bigger online presence. I have to cultivate my fans more. I have to engage more with my fans. I have to make sure people still see me because there's a plethora of artists all over. When I first started doing the convention scene, I'm sure there was still a lot of artists that were out there, but they didn't have access. I think there was MySpace, there was DeviantArt, and then the Comic Cons. Yahoo and all those other, AOL chat rooms and stuff like that. They were doing their thing, and some people got their first starts on like message boards and whatnot, but it was still hard to find the right one where you can actually get your foot in the door and have people see and listen to what you do. So now that there's so many comic book conventions out there and there are so many ways to show your artwork online, it's like, okay, what do you have that's different from the next person, and what reason do I have to spend my money on you versus the next person? So that's where I'm trying to focus now. Like this 6 fan arts thing is pretty fun. I've been, I chose some of there's been a lot of responses to it. So I chose some of the characters that I knew either was going to get a good response or that I was just going to have a good time practicing with. And that way I can utilize that as a means to say, hey, I can do this. Do you want me to do this for you? And another thing that was similar to that was the Toon Me challenge, where you drew half your face as a cartoon. So I did that of myself. Somebody said, "Hey, I want that." So we worked it out. She sent me money through PayPal, and she just got her sketch today. So these little things of trying to keep my work fresh and keep myself out there to allow for fans to still connect to me, that's what's going to help, I think, in this time of isolation and staying by yourself, that it's like, okay, you got to get yourself out there still, and the social media platforms are the best way. So in all that, I'm still also creating more content for a reason to smile. So I'm working on a couple short stories, so that way I can build up the character base and build up that universe that we were talking about earlier. I am thinking about ways to create more board books, ways of creating more art for gallery exhibits. So there's a whole bunch of irons that I'm trying to strike to get hot and keep my name and a reason to smile out in the public, because as much as we all love Spider-Man and Superman and all those guys, they don't belong to me. I can't make my living off of them. So a reason to smile is where I want to try to keep that focus the largest and be able to utilize that to, you know, help keep my name fresh in people's eyes and bring a wonderful story to the masses.
And speaking
And
about bringing your
speaking about
name
bringing
to
your
the
name to
masses,
the masses,
where can people
where
find
can
you?
people
Where can
find
people
you? Where
get your
can people
prints,
get your
your
prints,
books,
your books,
follow you on Twitter,
follow you on
Instagram,
Twitter,
Facebook,
Instagram, Facebook,
etc.?
So
etc.?
you can find me on Facebook at The Curve, the CURV. You can find me on Instagram as The Learning Curve, The Learning CURV. On Twitter, it's THA instead of THE, but everywhere else is THE. And then I have an Etsy, so you can look my name up, Javier Cruz Winnik, on Etsy, and I have my books and my prints on there, as well as my T-shirts. I have a Threadless account, so you can see my Threadless gallery, and you can also access some of that. You can pay me through the Etsy site, and I'm looking into trying to become an LLC and get my own website, so I don't have to use Etsy, in order to continue to build a reason to smile and help bring it into schools and get the books out there.
Well, everybody,
Well, everybody,
even with my broken
even with my
audio,
broken audio,
and I'm new
and
to
I'm
Zoom,
new to
so please
Zoom,
don't
so
shoot me,
please don't
anybody.
shoot me, anybody.
But go follow
But go follow
Javier.
Javier.
There you go. You said it right the second time. There you go.
I said it right the
I
second
said it
time.
right the second time.
So go follow him.
So
Follow him on
follow
Twitter,
him, follow him
Facebook,
on Twitter,
Instagram.
Instagram.
Go do the
Go
6
do the
challenge
6
too.
challenge
Don't bother
too.
him for
Don't bother him
commissions.
for commissions.
Go get a print from
Go get
him
a print
too.
from him too.
And anything
Custom work,
else,
man.
Anything else, please.
Whatever you guys need, I got it for you. I'm the artist that makes it happen.
See, you heard it. You heard it from him.
You heard it from him.
He makes it
He
happen.
makes it happen.
Anyway, I would really like to thank you for coming on, because I do appreciate it.
I do appreciate it.
We did an interview 4 years ago, just so everybody knows that we went more in depth and we had a deeper discussion, and this was way more informal. So please go check that out. It's early on in the podcast, which is the Pop Anime Comics Lounge. And it's a great interview, and I'm glad that you're back. And when things calm down, we're going to have to do a more formal interview again.
I can dig it.